Bring me someone smarter!
You just have to switch these parameters.
That is absolutely brilliant!
The sound of a $5,000 crystal tumbler shattering against a mahogany wall silenced the entire room. In the penthouse suite of New York's most exclusive restaurant, Alistair Sterling, a man worth $300 billion, was shaking with rage. His empire was exactly 12 hours away from collapsing, and the 12 PhD graduates sitting around the table were staring at their laptops in terrified silence. They said the problem was impossible. They said the math didn't exist. But they didn't know that the person who held the solution wasn't sitting in a leather chair. She was standing in the shadows, holding a tray of dirty napkins, waiting for permission to speak. And when she finally did, she wouldn't just fix his code, she would destroy his entire understanding of power. The silence in the private dining room of the Obsidian was heavier than the humid New York air outside. Situated on the 90th floor of a super-tall skyscraper on Billionaire's Row, the room offered a panoramic view of Central Park, currently drowning in the twilight of a rainy Tuesday. But no one was looking at the view. Every set of eyes was fixed on Alistair Sterling. Alistair was 42, though tonight he looked 60. He was the founder of Sterling Dynamics, the conglomerate that effectively ran the modern world's logistics and quantum computing infrastructure. If a package moved from Shanghai to London, Sterling's algorithms guided it. If a bank transferred funds, Sterling's security encrypted it. But tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Sterling Dynamics was scheduled to launch Project Ether, a revolutionary autonomous supply chain AI that was supposed to replace human oversight entirely. The stock market had already priced in the success. The presales were in the trillions. There was just one catastrophic problem. The system didn't work. "Tell me that again," Alistair said. His voice was dangerously low, a rumble that vibrated through the massive oak table. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Brioni suit, his knuckles white. Marcus Thorne, the chief technology officer, and a man widely regarded as a visionary in Silicon Valley, wiped a bead of sweat from his receding hairline. "Alistair, please. We've run the simulations 1,000 times. The node synchronization fails when the variable load hits 90%. It's a cascading latency issue. It's mathematically impossible to resolve without rewriting the core kernel." "Rewriting the kernel takes 6 months, Alistair said, his voice rising. "We launch in 12 hours. "We have to delay," Marcus whispered, looking down at his untouched filet mignon. Alistair stood up. The movement was so abrupt that his chair skidded back with a screech. He walked to the window, staring at his reflection ghosted against the city lights. "If we delay, the stock crashes by 40%. The SEC investigates. The DoD cancels the defense contracts. I lose the company. You lose your options. We are all ruined." He turned back to the room. 12 of the brightest minds in the world sat there. There was Julian, a double doctorate from MIT. Sarah, a former NSA cryptographer. David, a prodigy from Zurich. Sterling paid them a combined salary of $30 million a year. "I am paying you for a solution," Alistair roared, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. "I don't want to hear about latency. I don't want to hear about node synchronization. I want the damn patch. Fix it." "We can't," Julian said, his voice trembling. "Sir, the logic loops. It's a paradox. The AI tries to optimize 2 conflicting routes simultaneously. It's like asking a car to go left and right at the exact same time. It crashes the system." Alistair grabbed his glass of scotch, a rare Macallan, aged 50 years, and hurled it across the room. Smash! The glass exploded against the silk wallpaper, sending amber liquid raining down onto the carpet. A shard flew dangerously close to Marcus's ear. "Get out!" Alistair hissed. The team froze. "I said get out!" Alistair screamed, his face flushing a deep, terrifying crimson. "Get out of my sight! Go to the war room downstairs and don't come back until you have a solution or a resignation letter. Go!" The room scrambled. Laptops were snapped shut. Papers gathered in frantic heaps. The 12 geniuses of the Western world fled the room like scolded schoolchildren, leaving the door slightly ajar. Alistair stood alone in the center of the room, his chest heaving. The smell of expensive alcohol and fear hung in the air. He was a man who had conquered every industry he touched, a man who had built an empire from nothing. And now he was going to lose it all because of a math problem. He loosened his tie, feeling the suffocating grip of panic. He needed a miracle. He needed a genius. But he had already bought all the geniuses, and they had failed him. "Useless," he muttered, pacing the room. "Every single one of them. Parasites." He walked to the intercom on the wall and pressed the button for the maitre d'. "Send someone in to clean this mess up," he barked, "and bring me another bottle. The whole bottle." He collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. He didn't notice the service door in the corner of the room opening silently. He didn't notice the young woman stepping inside, her eyes scanning the shattered glass, and the broken man. Lena Andrea paused at the threshold of the private dining room. Her hands were shaking, just slightly, beneath the white linen napkin draped over her arm. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was a level 1 server at the Obsidian, which meant she was restricted to the main floor, serving water and clearing breadcrumbs. The private dining room was reserved for level 5 staff, men with French accents and impeccable posture. But the restaurant was understaffed tonight, the flu having taken out half the senior crew, and the maitre d', a frantic man named Henri, had shoved her toward the elevator with a dustpan and a terrified look in his eyes. "Don't speak," Henri had hissed. "Don't look him in the eye. Clean the glass. Pour the drink. Disappear. If you annoy Mr. Sterling, you won't just be fired. You'll be blacklisted from every service job in the tri-state area." Lena took a breath, steeling herself. She was 26 years old, but her eyes held the exhaustion of someone twice her age. Her uniform was a size too big, hiding a frame that had grown too thin from skipping meals to pay rent. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe regulation bun. She stepped into the room. The atmosphere was toxic. She could feel the tension radiating off the man sitting at the head of the table, Alistair Sterling. She knew his face from the covers of Forbes and Time. She knew his reputation, a visionary, a shark, a tyrant. Lena moved quietly, her rubber-soled shoes silent on the plush carpet. She knelt near the wall, carefully picking up the large shards of crystal. "Leave the bottle," Alistair grunted without looking up. He was massaging his temples, his eyes closed. "Yes, sir," Lena whispered. She placed a fresh glass and the heavy crystal decanter on the table near his elbow. She should have left then. That was the rule. Clean, serve, disappear. But as she turned to go, her eyes caught the glare of the presentation screen at the far end of the room. The fleeing executives had left the projector running. It was a complex network topology graph, a visual representation of the Project Ether algorithm. Red warning lights were blinking on the screen. Critical failure. Optimization. Loop detected. Sector 7G. Lena froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She stared at the equation, scrolling beneath the graph. It was a variation of the Dijkstra algorithm, modified for quantum superposition, intended to calculate the fastest supply route across dynamic traffic variables. But it was wrong. It wasn't just a bug. It was a fundamental architectural flaw in the heuristic weighting. They were trying to force a linear solution on a non-linear problem. "Sector 7G isn't the problem," she murmured, the words slipping out before her brain could stop them. It's the redundancy filter in Sector 4. The room went dead silent. Lena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She hadn't meant to speak aloud. She had spent the last 3 years training herself to be invisible, to be a ghost, to be just a waitress who didn't know algebra, let alone quantum logistics. Slowly, terrifyingly, Alistair Sterling opened his eyes. He didn't turn his head immediately. He stared at the wall for a second, processing the fact that another human voice had dared to invade his misery. He swiveled his chair around. His eyes were like ice, piercing, cold, and exhausted. "What did you say?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud. It was soft, curious, and dangerous. Lena gripped her serving tray tight against her chest like a shield. Nothing, sir. I apologize. I was just talking to myself. I'll leave." She backed away toward the door. "Stop!" Alistair commanded. Lena froze. "Sir, I really need to get back to the floor. Henry will—" "I don't care about Henry," Alistair said, standing up. He walked toward her, towering over her. He smelled of expensive cologne and ozone. "You looked at the screen, and you said something about Sector 4. Why?" Lena looked down at her cheap black shoes. She couldn't do this. If she engaged, questions would be asked. Questions about who she was. Questions about why Lena Andrea, the disgraced former PhD candidate from MIT, whose life had been ruined by an academic scandal, was wiping tables in Manhattan. "I don't know anything, sir," she lied, her voice trembling. I saw the red light." Alistair studied her. He was a predator, and he could smell fear. But he could also spot a lie. He looked at her hands, calloused from hard work, but her fingers were long, delicate. Piano fingers, or coda fingers. "You said, 'It's the redundancy filter in Sector 4', Alistair quoted perfectly. "That's technical jargon. Waitresses don't use technical jargon. Who are you?" "I'm nobody," Lena said, her eyes stinging. "Please, sir, I need this job." Alistair let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "You need this job? I'm about to lose a $300 billion company because 12 men with doctorates can't figure out why my system is looping. And you, a girl who pours water, thinks she knows why." He gestured aggressively toward the screen. "Go ahead then. Humor me. I've got 10 hours until I'm bankrupt. I might as well be entertained." "Sir, I can't—" "Look at it!" Alistair shouted, his patience snapping. "If you know something, say it, or get out and let me drown in peace." Lena looked at the man. He was desperate. Beneath the arrogance, she saw the same panic she felt every month when rent was due. She looked at the screen again. The code was messy, bloated. It looked like Marcus Thorne's work, flashy but unstable. She remembered the nights in the lab at MIT, before everything went wrong. Before her professor, Dr. Aris, had stolen her thesis and framed her for data manipulation to cover his tracks. She remembered the beauty of pure logic. She walked past Alistair. She put the tray down on the mahogany table. She walked up to the whiteboard next to the screen, where Julian had been frantically scribbling equations in red marker. She picked up a black marker. "Your team is trying to solve the traveling salesman problem using a static grid," Lena said, her voice changing. The tremble was gone. It was replaced by the cool, analytical tone of an expert. "But the supply chain isn't static. It's fluid." She uncapped the marker. "The glitch in Sector 7G is a symptom, not the disease. The system loops because it's waiting for a confirmation from Sector 4 that never comes, because you have a redundancy filter blocking false positives that aren't actually false." She drew a quick, sharp line through the complex equation Julian had written. "You don't need to rewrite the kernel," she said. writing a new, streamlined string of logic notation next to it. You just need to bypass the filter using a recursive loop, like this. She wrote for 30 seconds. The marker squeaked against the board. Alistair watched her. He didn't understand the specific syntax. He was a business builder, not a coder. But he recognized the confidence. He recognized the flow. It was the way a master pianist attacked a concerto. She capped the marker and stepped back. If you inject that patch into the subroutine, the latency will drop to 0. The paradox resolves itself because you're allowing the AI to make a best guess and correct it later, rather than waiting for perfect certainty. She turned to face him. The adrenaline was fading, and the fear was rushing back. She realized what she had done. She had just exposed herself. Alistair was staring at the whiteboard. He pulled out his phone. "Get Marcus back in here," Alistair said, into the phone, his eyes never leaving Lena's face. "Now, run and tell him to bring his laptop." He hung up. He looked at Lena, really looked at her, for the first time. He saw the frayed collar of her uniform, the dark circles under her eyes. "What is your name?" he asked softly. "Lena," she whispered. "Lena who?" "Just Lena." The door burst open. Marcus Thorne rushed in, breathless, his tie askew. "Alistair, what is it? Did you call legal?" "Look at the board," Alistair commanded. Marcus squinted at the whiteboard, adjusting his glasses. He looked annoyed. "Who wrote this scrawl? It's... Wait!" Marcus froze. He stepped closer. His eyes widened. He traced the line of logic Lena had written. His mouth opened slightly. He pulled out his laptop, typing furiously, running a simulation of the logic on the board. A minute passed. The only sound was the clicking of keys and the rain against the window. "Well?" Alistair demanded. Marcus looked up, his face pale. He looked from the board to Alistair, and then, with confusion, to the waitress standing in the corner. It works," Marcus stammered. The simulation cleared. The loop is gone. Efficiency is up to 99.8%. He looked at Alistair in shock. "How did you come up with this?" "It utilizes a ghost protocol logic that hasn't been used since the MIT papers in 2019. Alistair didn't answer Marcus. He walked toward Lena. "You fixed in 30 seconds what my team couldn't fix in 3 months, Alistair said. "It was an obvious oversight," Lena said, grabbing her tray. "I have to go. My tables." "You're not going anywhere," Alistair said, blocking her path. "Please, sir. I don't want trouble." "Trouble?" Alistair laughed, a sound of pure relief. "You just saved a $300 billion launch. You're not a waitress, Lena. Who are you, really?" Lena's grip tightened on the tray. "I'm just someone who reads a lot, Mr. Sterling. Now please, let me work." "No," Alistair said. He turned to Marcus. "Marcus, give her your seat." "Excuse me?" Marcus sputtered. "Give her your seat," Alistair enunciated, "and get her a laptop." "Alistair, this is insane," Marcus protested, eyeing Lena's dirty apron with disdain. "She's a server. She probably just memorized some textbook. You can't let her near the source code. It's a security violation." "The only security violation I care about is incompetence. And you're full of it tonight, Marcus," Alistair snapped. He turned back to Lena. "Sit down, please." It wasn't a command this time. It was a plea. Lena looked at the door. She could run. She could leave right now, disappear into the kitchen, grab her bag, and never come back. She could keep her secret safe. She could keep hiding from the past that had destroyed her. But then she looked at the code on the screen. It was Project Ether. It was the kind of system she had dreamed of building before Dr. Aris took everything from her. It was beautiful, and it was broken, and she knew she could make it sing. She looked at Marcus Thorne, the man who was sneering at her. And suddenly, she felt a spark of anger. She was tired of cleaning up other people's messes. Lena Andrea set the tray of dirty napkins down on the expensive table. She untied her apron, letting it fall to the floor. She sat down in the leather chair. "I don't need his laptop," Lena said, her voice steady. "I need terminal access. And I need a coffee. Black. 2 sugars." Alistair Sterling smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in months. He looked at Marcus. "You heard the lady? Get her a coffee." The private dining room had been transformed into a makeshift command center. The remains of the filet mignon were gone, replaced by tangled server cables, 3 additional monitors, and a whiteboard covered in Lena's sharp, angular handwriting. Lena sat at the head of the table, Alistair's seat. For the last 3 hours, she hadn't spoken a word that wasn't a command. "Julian, reroute the TCP IP stacks through the virtual cluster," she said, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard Marcus had reluctantly provided. "Sarah, I need you to decrypt the handshake protocol on the legacy server. It's bottling the traffic." The team of 12 PhDs, the same ones who had looked at her with confusion an hour ago, were now moving with the desperate obedience of soldiers following a general who finally knew the way out of an ambush. Alistair stood by the window, watching her. He had seen CEOs run companies, he had seen generals run armies, but he had never seen anyone interact with a machine like this. It wasn't typing, it was a conversation. She anticipated the system's failures before they happened. "She's incredible," whispered Julian, standing next to Alistair. "The way she stacks the heuristic layers, it's like she can see the electricity." "She's a waitress, Julian," Marcus Thorne spat from the corner of the room. He wasn't helping. He was pacing, scrolling furiously on his tablet, making hushed phone calls. He looked like a man whose kingdom was being dismantled brick by brick. "She's saving your stock options, Marcus," Alistair said without looking at him. "Shut up and let her work." "We're close," Lena said suddenly. Her voice was hoarse. She grabbed the cold cup of coffee and took a sip without looking away from the screen. "The patch is stable. I'm initiating the compile sequence for the alpha build. If this holds, you launch on time." The room held its breath. On the main screen, a progress bar appeared. "Compiling. 20%, 45%, 70%. Come on," Alistair whispered. 99%. The screen flashed green. Compilation complete. System optimal. A cheer erupted in the room. Sarah high-fived David. Julian slumped into a chair, laughing with relief. Alistair felt a weight lift off his chest that was so heavy he almost felt lightheaded. They had done it. "Wait," Lena said. The cheer died instantly. Lena wasn't celebrating. She was leaning closer to the screen, her eyes narrowed. She typed a quick command line query. "What is it?" Alistair asked, stepping forward. "It's green. It works." "The logic loop is fixed," Lena said slowly. "But look at the data outflow. Sector 9. She pointed to a small, oscillating graph in the corner of the dashboard. It was barely moving, but to a trained eye, it was wrong. "There's a leak," Lena said. "Someone isn't just trying to crash the system. Someone inserted a siphon. Every time a transaction is processed, 0.01% of the data, proprietary user data, is being copied and sent to an external server." Alistair's face went cold. "Corporate espionage." "Who?" "I'm tracing the IP now," Lena said. Her fingers blurred. "It's bouncing. Cayman Islands, Russia, Shenzhen, back to New York." She hit the enter key. "The signal is coming from inside the building," Lena said, her voice chillingly calm. She spun the laptop around. "Mr. Sterling, this wasn't a glitch. The code was sabotaged. Someone wanted the launch to fail so they could steal the source code during the chaos of the crash." Alistair looked at the screen. Then he looked at his team. Who touched the Sector 9 architecture? Silence. Then, a voice cut through the room like a knife. It was her. Everyone turned. Marcus Thorne was standing in the center of the room, pointing a trembling finger at Lena. "What?" Alistair asked, frowning. "Don't listen to her, Alistair," Marcus said, his voice gaining confidence. "She planted that siphon. Just now. While she was fixing the code. It's a classic Trojan horse." "That's absurd," Lena said, standing up. "I just saved the Colonel. Why would I—" "Because you're a fraud," Marcus interrupted. He walked to the main projector and plugged in his tablet. "I knew I recognized you. It took me a few hours to dig through the sealed academic records, but I found it." A new image popped up on the giant screen. It was a mugshot, or rather, a university disciplinary photo. It was Lena, younger, looking terrified. Headline: Mid-doctoral candidate, expelled for data falsification and grant fraud. The room gasped. "Meet Lena Andrea," Marcus sneered, pacing around her like a prosecutor. Once the brightest star in the MIT Comp Sci department, until 3 years ago, when she was caught faking the results of her quantum logistics thesis to secure a $2 million grant. She was expelled, stripped of her credentials, and sued by the university. Marcus turned to Alistair. "She's not a genius, Alistair. She's a con artist, a disgraced academic who lied to get ahead. And now she's sitting at your computer with access to the most valuable source code on Earth." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "She didn't fix the system. She unlocked it so she could rob you blind." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Alistair looked at the screen, at the photo of the young, scared girl under the harsh headline. Then he looked at Lena. She wasn't defending herself. She had gone pale, her posture collapsing slightly. It was the look of someone who had been running from a ghost, only to have it finally tackle her. "Is it true?" Alistair asked. His voice was devoid of the warmth he had shown moments ago. He was the billionaire again, the man who protected his empire. "Lena," Alistair repeated, sharper. "Is it true? Were you expelled for fraud?" Lena looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her chin lifted. "I was expelled. Yes." "Get security," Marcus barked at Julian. "Get her out of here before she uploads anything else." "Wait!" Lena shouted. Her voice cracked, desperate. "I didn't plant the siphon. Marcus is lying." "I'm lying?" Marcus laughed, a cruel, incredulous sound. "I'm the CTO of Sterling Dynamics. You are a disgraced waitress with a record of lying for money. Who do you think he's going to believe?" "I solved the loop," Lena pleaded, looking directly at Alistair. "Marcus couldn't do it. None of them could. If I wanted to sabotage you, I would have let the system crash tomorrow morning. Why would I fix it just to steal data I could have taken from the wreckage? To be the hero," Marcus countered smoothly. "To get hired, to get inside. It's the long con." Alistair rubbed his face. He looked at the code Lena had written. It was brilliant. It was elegant. It didn't look like the work of a fraud. But the news article, the reputation. "Code doesn't lie," Alistair said quietly. "But people do." He walked over to Lena. "Step away from the computer." "Sir, please. Step away." Lena stepped back, her hands shaking. She felt the familiar crushing weight of injustice. It was happening again, just like with Dr. Orris. "Marcus," Alistair said, "check the logs. If she planted a siphon, there will be a timestamp." Marcus froze, just for a split second. A micro-expression of panic flitted across his face before he masked it with arrogance. I can't check the logs deeply while the system is compiling," Marcus lied. "It might destabilize the build. We should just hand her over to the police and wipe the machine." Lena saw the hesitation. She saw the sweat on Marcus's upper lip. and suddenly the pieces clicked. The bloated code, the oversight in Sector 4, the resistance to her help, the immediate accusation. "It wasn't me," Lena said softly, then louder. "It wasn't me. It was him." She pointed at Marcus. "Excuse me," Marcus sputtered. "You didn't want me to touch the computer because you knew I'd find it," Lena said, her voice gaining strength. She walked back toward the table, ignoring Marcus's flinch. "The siphon isn't new. It's been there for months. That's why the system was lagging. That's why the latency was high. The glitch was just a side effect of the data theft you were already running." "That is insanity!" Marcus yelled. "Alistair, are you going to listen to this criminal?" "Prove it," Alistair said. He wasn't looking at Marcus. He was looking at Lena. "You have 1 minute. Prove he did it, or you go to jail." "I can't prove it without the logs," Lena said. "And he says we can't open them." "I don't care what he says," Alistair said. "This is my company. Open the logs." Lena lunged for the keyboard. "No!" Marcus shouted. He physically moved to block her, grabbing her arm. "Security! Get in here!" Alistair didn't call security. He moved faster than a man of his size should be able to. He grabbed Marcus by the collar of his expensive suit and shoved him hard against the wall. "If you touch her again," Alistair snarled, his face inches from Marcus's, "I will throw you out of that window." He released Marcus and turned to Lena. "Type," Lena typed. She bypassed the standard admin tools and went straight into the kernel history, the black box of the code. "Here," she said, pointing to the screen. Lines of code scrolled by. "The siphon was installed 6 months ago," Lena explained. "Author ID is masked, but look at the signature key." She highlighted a string of hexadecimal characters. 055 Mathorn 77. Silence descended on the room. It was so quiet you could hear the rain hitting the glass. "You signed it?" Julian asked, staring at Marcus in horror. "You signed your malware." It's a frame job," Marcus stammered, his face turning a sickly shade of grey. "She planted that. She just typed it in." "Impossible," Sarah, the cryptographer, spoke up for the first time. "That's a kernel-level signature. It's immutable once compiled. That's been there for months." Alistair turned to Marcus. The look on his face was terrifying. It wasn't anger. It was total, cold destruction. "You were shorting the stock," Alistair realized. "You were going to crash the launch, tank the price, steal the data, and walk away with billions while I burned." Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Get out," Alistair said. "Alistair, Get him out!" Alistair roared, a sound that shook the walls. 2 large security guards who had been waiting in the hall entered. They didn't need instructions. They grabbed Marcus by the arms. As they dragged him out, kicking and screaming about lawyers, Alistair didn't even watch. He turned back to Lena. She was standing by the table, trembling again. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her exhausted. She looked small in the big room. "You were right," Alistair said. He sounded tired. "About everything." "I have to go," Lena said quietly. She picked up her apron from the floor. "My shift ended hours ago. Henry is going to kill me." "Lena," Alistair said. She stopped at the door. "The article," Alistair said. "The fraud at MIT. Did you do it?" Lena turned. She looked at him with clear, sad eyes. "I wrote the thesis. My professor, Dr. Aris, realized it was worth millions. He demanded his name be first. When I refused, he accessed my server, corrupted the dataset, and reported me to the dean. He had tenure. I had nothing. They believed him." She shrugged, a gesture of painful resignation. "That's how the world works, Mr. Sterling. People with power take what they want. People like me just serve the coffee." She opened the door. "Lena, wait!" Alistair called out. But she was gone. The door clicked shut, leaving the billionaire alone with a saved company, a traitorous CTO, and the realization that he had just let the smartest person he'd ever met walk out into the rain. The silence in the private dining room after Lena left was deafening. The hum of the servers was the only sound. Alistair Sterling stood motionless for a long time. He looked at the whiteboard where the Waitress had drawn the salvation of his company in black marker. He looked at the empty spot where Marcus Thorne had sat, the man he had trusted for a decade who had nearly knifed him in the back. "Sir?" Julian ventured cautiously. "We need to stabilize the patch. The launch is in 8 hours." "Do it," Alistair said, his voice distant. "You have the roadmap. Just follow her math." "We will," Sarah added. "But, sir, the complexity of this recursive loop. If we hit another snag, we don't understand the underlying theory. We're just copy-pasting her logic. If it breaks again, we can't fix it." Alistair realized she was right. They were technicians. Lena was the architect. He grabbed his coat. "Keep it running. I'm going out." "Out?" "Sir, the press will be downstairs in 3 hours." "Then I have 3 hours," Alistair said, striding out the door. He marched into the main restaurant floor. It was closing time. The lights were dimmed. Staff were stacking chairs. He found Henri, the maitre d', in the kitchen, berating a busboy. "Henri," Alistair said. Henri jumped, spinning around. "Mr. Sterling, I am so sorry about earlier. That girl, she violated protocol. I assure you, she has been dealt with." Alistair felt a cold pit in his stomach. "Dealt with?" "Fired," Henri said, puffing out his chest as if expecting a medal. "Sent her packing immediately. Told her not to bother coming back for her tips. We don't tolerate staff bothering the VIPs." Alistair stared at the little man. He thought about Lena, who had just saved his life's work, walking out into the cold rain with no job and no money, punished for her brilliance. "You fired her," Alistair repeated. "On the spot." "Henri," Alistair said, leaning in close. "You are an idiot." Henri's smile faltered. "Sir? That girl just saved Sterling Dynamics. She is worth more than this entire building." Alistair straightened his tie. "You're fired, Henri. Effective immediately. Get out of my restaurant." Henri gaped, sputtering. Alistair didn't wait. He walked over to the employee lockers. He saw a young woman, another server, crying softly as she changed her shoes. "Excuse me," Alistair said, gentle. The girl looked up, terrified. "I didn't do anything." "I know. You're friends with Lena, aren't you?" The girl nodded. "Where does she live?" I can't tell you. She values her privacy. She's had trouble with stalkers before, from her old university." Alistair pulled a wad of cash from his pocket, everything he had on him, easily $2,000. He placed it on the bench. "I am not going to hurt her," Alistair said. "I need to apologize, and I need to offer her a job. Please." The girl looked at the cash, then at Alistair's desperate eyes. She grabbed a napkin and scribbled an address. "It's in the Bronx," she whispered. "It's not a nice area. Please be careful with her. She's fragile." The rain was coming down in sheets as Alistair's armored limousine navigated the potholes of the South Bronx. The scenery changed from glass skyscrapers to brick tenements with barred windows. The car stopped in front of a crumbling building. "Wait here," Alistair told his driver. "Sir, this is a red zone," the driver warned. "Let me come with you." "No, I need to do this alone." Alistair stepped out, his Italian leather shoes instantly soaking in a puddle. He walked up the graffiti-covered steps and found the buzzer for 4B. It was broken. He pushed the front door open. The lock was busted too. He climbed 4 flights of stairs that smelled of mildew and old cooking oil. He found door 4B. He He could hear a violin playing inside. It was a sad, complex melody. Bach, he thought. He knocked. The music stopped. "Who is it?" Lena's voice, muffled, scared. "It's Alistair Sterling." Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then, the sound of a chain sliding. The door opened a crack. Lena stood there, dressed in an oversized grey sweatshirt and sweatpants. Her hair was down, wet from the rain. She looked even younger than she had in the uniform. "What do you want?" she asked. "Did Marcus send the police?" "Marcus is in federal custody," Alistair said. "I pressed charges for corporate espionage 10 minutes ago." Lena's shoulders sagged. She opened the door wider. The apartment was tiny, a studio the size of his bathroom, a mattress on the floor, a hot plate. But the walls were covered in paper. Mathematical proofs, code snippets, diagrams taped together to form a wallpaper of genius. And in the corner, a cheap electric violin. "I came to apologize," Alistair said, stepping inside awkwardly. He felt massive and intrusive in the small space. "And to thank you." "You're welcome," Lena said, sitting on the edge of the mattress. "Can you leave now?" "No," Alistair said. "I can't. My team is good, Lena. But they aren't you. They're copy-pasting your work. If something shifts during the launch, we're dead. I need you." "I can't help you. I'll pay you," Alistair said fast. "Whatever you want. 500,000? $1 million? Name the price." Lena laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You think this is about money? Look at me, Mr. Sterling. I'm eating instant noodles. Of course I need money. But I can't work for you. Why? Because of the fraud accusation? I don't care. I know you didn't do it. It doesn't matter what you know." Lena stood up, her eyes flashing. "It matters what the industry knows. Do you know who the head of the National AI Ethics Board is? The board that has to certify Project Ether before it goes live tomorrow?" Alistair froze. He knew exactly who it was. "Dr. Aris," Alistair whispered. "Dr. Aris," Lena confirmed bitterly. "The man who ruined me. If he sees my name on your payroll, if he sees me anywhere near that code, he won't just fail the certification. He will bury your company. He will claim you're employing a known fraudster to compromise national security. He has the power to revoke your license." She walked to the window, looking out at the rain. "I am radioactive, Alistair. I touch your company, and it dies. That's why I hide. That's why I wait tables, because it's the only place he can't find me." Alistair stared at her. The injustice of it made his blood boil. A man like Aris, a thief with a PhD, sat in a tower judging the world, while the true genius lived in a box. "So you're just going to let him win?" Alistair asked. "Forever? I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do." Alistair walked over to her. He didn't touch her, but he stood close enough to shield her from the drafty window. "Come with me," he said. "I told you he's going to be at the launch tomorrow," Alistair said. "He's the auditor. He's coming to inspect the code." Lena turned pale. "Then you're definitely screwed. If he sees the patch I wrote, he'll recognize the style. He knows how I code. He'll claim it's his, or he'll claim I stole it from him." "Exactly," Alistair smiled grimly. "He will claim it's his. He's arrogant. He won't be able to resist taking credit for the elegance of that solution." So, Alistair said, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous plan. We let him claim it. And then, in front of the press, in front of the board, in front of the world, you prove him wrong." "How?" Lena whispered. "It's his word against mine. He has tenure. I have a rap sheet." "You said you wrote the thesis," Alistair said. "Real artists sign their work. Tell me, Lena, Did you sign the code? Lena looked at him. A slow, mischievous spark ignited in her eyes. It was the first time he had seen her look truly alive. Yes, she whispered. I always sign my work. Deep, where no one looks. Then get your coat, Alistair said. We have a gala to crash. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was glittering. It was 8 a.m., but the champagne was already flowing. This was the launch event of the decade. Senators, tech moguls, and generals were mingling, waiting for the unveiling of Project Ether. Alistair Sterling stood on the stage, looking calm. Inside, he was terrified. In the front row sat Dr. Silas Orris. He was a small man with silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. He was the gatekeeper. Without his stamp of approval, Project Ether was illegal. Ladies and gentlemen, Alistair spoke into the microphone. Thank you for coming. Today, logistics changes forever. He went through the presentation. The graphics were slick. The stock price was already ticking up on the giant ticker behind him. But before we go live, Alistair said, we are honored to have the chairman of the AI Ethics Board here to verify the integrity of our new kernel. Dr. Silas Arris, please join me. Applause. Dr. Arris walked up the stairs, shaking Alistair's hand firmly. Excellent work, Alistair, Arris said into the mic, his voice smooth like oil. I reviewed the final build this morning, the latency solution in Sector 4. It is truly remarkable. A stroke of genius. Thank you, Doctor, Alistair said. It was a difficult problem. My team struggled with it for months. Well, Arris chuckled, adjusting his glasses. It reminds me very much of some theoretical work I did at MIT a few years back. The ghost protocol logic. I'm glad to see my theories being put to such good use. In fact, looking at the syntax, I dare say it's almost a direct implementation of my proprietary research. There it was. The trap was baited. Alistair feigned surprise. Is it? We certainly didn't mean to infringe on your work, Doctor. We developed this in-house. Arris waved a dismissive hand. Oh, I'm not litigious, Alistair. As long as the Ethics Board is acknowledged for its contribution, I see no reason to delay the certification. He was holding the project hostage. He was claiming ownership of the code in exchange for his signature. It was a power move, subtle and devastating. Actually, Alistair said, his voice hardening, I'd like to bring out the lead architect of that specific patch, just to clarify the attribution. Arris looked confused. I thought Marcus Thorne was your CTO. Marcus is unavailable, Alistair said. Please welcome the true architect of the Ether kernel. Alistair gestured to the curtain. The heavy velvet parted. Lena Andrea stepped out. She wasn't wearing a waitress uniform. She wasn't wearing sweatpants. She was wearing a sharp, black, tailored suit that Alistair had rushed to the apartment at 4 a.m. Her hair was pulled back. She looked like a CEO. She looked like a predator. The color drained from Dr. Arris's face. He looked like he had seen a ghost. You, Arris whispered, forgetting the microphone was on. A murmur went through the crowd. Who was this woman? Hello, Dr. Arris, Lena said, her voice amplified through the hall. She walked to the center of the stage. It's been a while. This is an outrage, Arris hissed to Alistair. This woman is a fraud. She was expelled from MIT for fabricating data. If she touched this system, I am shutting you down right now. He turned to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot certify this project. This person is a known charlatan. The crowd gasped. Phones were raised. The stock ticker on the screen behind them wobbled. She didn't steal your work, Silas, Alistair said calmly. She says you stole hers. Preposterous, Orris shouted, his composure cracking. I am a tenured professor. She is a dropout. The burden of proof is on her. Actually, Lena said, stepping up to the podium computer, the proof is in the code. She typed quickly. The giant screen behind them shifted from the logo to the raw command line of the code. Dr. Aris claims the ghost protocol logic is his, Lena said to the audience. He claimed the same thing about my thesis 3 years ago. He said he wrote the algorithms, and that I merely falsified the data to make them look better. She turned to Aris. If you wrote this code, Doctor, you must know about the dead man's switch. Aris blinked. The what? The cryptographic signature, Lena said. Every coder has a fingerprint. You can steal the logic, you can steal the variables, but you can't steal the style. She looked at the screen. In the Sector 4 patch, the one you just praised as your own work, I embedded a hidden variable sequence. It governs the load balancing. Lena typed, run decipher or no sourced. Key, truth. On the giant screen, the lines of code began to shift. The hexadecimal values rearranged themselves. They weren't random numbers, they were ASCII values. The code didn't just execute functions, it spelled out text. Thousands of lines of code compressed and realigned until a massive block of text appeared on the screen, 10 feet high. It was a letter. Date, October 12th, 2021. Author, Lena Andrea. Subject, dissertation backup. Note, if you are reading this, Silas Aris has stolen my work. This algorithm is encrypted with a key that only exists in my private server logs. The logic depends on the variable ev origin. The room was silent. Lena turned to Oris. The variable ev origin, EV. Lena Andrea. The entire system you just claimed credit for runs on a variable named after me. If you remove it, the code crashes. She looked at him dead in the eye. Go ahead, Doctor. Delete my name. See what happens to the billions of dollars in this room. Aris stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He was trapped. If he claimed the code was his, he had to explain why his proprietary work was built on a variable named after the student he expelled. If he tried to delete it, the launch would fail, and he would be blamed for destroying Project Ether. It must be a coincidence, Aris stammered, sweat pouring down his face. Malware, she planted it. 3 years ago, Alistair interjected. This timestamp is from your own university server backups, Doctor. We just pulled the cache. Alistair pointed to the screen. The date was verified. You framed her, Alistair said, his voice booming like a judge's gavel. You stole her future to secure your tenure, and today you tried to do it again. Flashbulbs erupted. Reporters were shouting questions. Dr. Aris, is it true? Did you steal the thesis? Aris looked at the crowd, then at Lena. He saw the cold, hard intelligence in her eyes. He realized he was standing on a trap door that she had built 3 years ago, just waiting for him to step on it. He turned and ran. He actually ran. He scurried off the stage, pushing past a waiter, disappearing into the confusion of the crowd as security moved to intercept him. The ballroom was in chaos. Alistair walked over to the microphone. I think, Alistair said, his voice cutting through the noise, that counts as a certification of competence. He turned to Lena. She was trembling slightly, the adrenaline crash hitting her. Ladies and gentlemen, Alistair announced, I would like to introduce you to the new Chief Technology Officer of Sterling Dynamics, Lena Andrea. The applause started slowly, confused at first, then building. The engineers in the back, Julian, Sarah, David, started clapping first, then the investors, then the generals. Lena looked out at the sea of people. For 3 years she had been invisible. Today, everyone saw her. She looked at Alistair. He nodded. She took a breath, stepped to the mic, and smiled. "Shall we launch?" she asked. She hit the enter key. The screen exploded into green. "System online. Project Ether active." The rain fell softly over Manhattan, but inside the penthouse of the Obsidian, the storm had long since passed. Alistair Sterling stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, swirling a glass of Macallan 50. Below him, the city lights shimmered, a digital grid he now indisputably ruled. Since the launch of Project Ether, Sterling Dynamics hadn't just recovered, it had evolved. Global logistics efficiency was up 400%. The stock price was untouchable. But Alistair wasn't looking at the skyline. He was watching the woman in the center of the room. Lena Andrea. She wore a midnight blue gown that caught the light with every movement, a stark contrast to the oversized uniform she had worn here 12 months ago. She was no longer the invisible waitress. She was the chief technology officer of Sterling Dynamics, Wired Magazine's Innovator of the Year, and the only person Alistair trusted with his life. As the last guests of the anniversary gala filtered out, the room grew quiet. "They're finally gone," Lena said, walking over to join him. She looked tired, but it was the good kind of tired, the exhaustion of victory. "You dazzled them," Alistair said, admiring her. "Even the senators looked terrified of you." Lena smiled, leaning against the glass. "It's amazing what a difference a year makes. Last time I was in this room, Marcus was trying to have me arrested." "Marcus is currently enjoying the hospitality of a federal prison," Alistair reminded her, his voice grim. 15 years for corporate espionage. "And Aris?" "Stripped of his tenure," Lena replied, a flash of satisfaction in her eyes. "He's facing lawsuits from 6 other students he defrauded. I heard he's working data entry in New Jersey." "Justice is efficient," Alistair noted. "Speaking of efficiency," Lena turned to face him, her expression softening. "The system is running at 100%. We have no more bugs to fix, Alistair. What are we supposed to do now?" Alistair set his glass down. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. The professional boundary had evaporated months ago, replaced by a partnership that was electric and terrifyingly real. "You saved my company, Lena," he said quietly, "but you know that's not why I kept you around." "Oh," she raised an eyebrow, playful yet vulnerable. "I thought it was for my coding." "I kept you because you were the first person in 20 years who didn't tell me what I wanted to hear," Alistair said, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You saw a desperate man throwing a tantrum, and you handed him a reality check. You didn't just fix the code, you fixed the architect." Lena's breath hitched. "Logic dictates that I should argue with you." "Forget logic," Alistair whispered. He leaned in, and when he kissed her, it wasn't desperate. It was calculated, precise, and perfect. It was the closing of a loop, the final resolution to the paradox they had started together. They broke apart, breathless, resting their foreheads against each other, against the backdrop of the glowing city. "So," Lena whispered, smiling against his lips. "What's the next project?" "Sector. Us," Alistair replied, "and I think we're just getting started." And that is the story of how a spilled drink and a hidden genius changed the world. It's a reminder that intelligence doesn't always wear a suit, and the solution to your biggest problem might be standing right in front of you, waiting for a chance to speak. Lena Andrea went from cleaning tables to running the digital world because she refused to let her circumstances define her capability. She proved that while power can suppress the truth, it can never truly delete it. If you enjoyed this story of justice, genius, and sweet revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the algorithm find more people like you. And here is my question for you today. Have you ever been underestimated by someone in power, only to prove them wrong later? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next story about the underdogs who took over the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.